Hey, I'm Jake, and I made Crabber.net. As we're coming up on about a year since Crabber's initial popularity boom, I thought I would make a couple videos that sort of go over, the ups and downs of Crabber, why it exists, things that went right, things that went wrong, and sort of just clear things up a little bit for the community and people who are interested. I'm going to go into this assuming that you know what Crabber is, but if you don't, you could sort of look around. It was like a Twitter clone, but with an emphasis on community and openness, moderation, acceptance, fun, that kind of stuff. But this first episode is basically going to go over why Crabber exists in the first place. Before it became what it was, what were the intentions going into it? So to be entirely clear, while I had a couple open source contributions towards the end of Crabber's life, the rest of it, all of the programming, the ideas, and maintenance, everything, every aspect of it was all me. Just a one-person situation. So the situation in which it first came about was I was temporarily living in another state from my home state of Vermont. As COVID appeared in March of 2020, I was starting to move back to Vermont. I was starting a new job as I was coming back as well. But the thing is, because of COVID, I had a quarantine for 2 weeks before I could start my new job. So I had 2 weeks of free time on my hands. I just moved, so there wasn't any things I had to do. I mean, with everything being locked down, I wasn't even really able to leave the house, so I had a lot of free time. I saw this Tom Scott video on YouTube. It was called "This Video Has X Views," where X is however many views it currently has. It would update its own title with a script that he wrote. But basically the video was about APIs in the history of Web 2.0, the sort of bygone era where all websites were open and connected, and anybody could just write a very simple application that could interface with multiple websites and sort of create some sort of amalgamation or tool or interesting idea from the data and the capabilities that were stored on those websites. And it kind of made me excited about going back and exploring that and making a new Twitter bot, right? Because Twitter is a website that, for all its flaws, is really intriguing to me and one of my favorite social networks that I've ever used. So I set out to create an application using the Twitter API, but the thing was, because of how large Twitter is and all of the malicious things that have been done with Twitter, their API is really hard to use. As somebody who's just an independent developer having a little bit of fun, right? It's kind of geared towards corporations and advertisers. You got to go through this lengthy application and review process for even getting access to the API in the first place. You have to declare all of your intents. You have to pay money to use the API at all. And everything that you can use is extremely locked down and restricted. So it wasn't exactly conducive for making just a weekend project, a fun application. And this kind of annoyed me. I'm saying this very chill, but it kind of got on my nerves a little bit. So I was like, you know what? Maybe instead of making an application for Twitter, what I'll do is I'll create my own Twitter with a better API that's more accessible towards everybody, including beginners, which is really important. Right now, I feel like it's hard to become a developer because there's so many steps that you have to get through in order to get started with any project, whereas it used to be a lot easier before and a lot more simple and easy to keep in your head. So I decided to make my own Twitter with its own API that could handle all that stuff, and then make my bot that I wanted to make. So over 1 weekend, basically, I just hunkered down and got started. I started off making a little database and then laying out my schema and getting the basic application going. Basically, I started with the API that would power the whole thing with the intention of only making a very minimal text-based website, but the entire interesting part would have been the back end. But as I started coming to the front end, I got tempted a little bit to, I'll make it look a little bit like Twitter. I'll make it a little prettier. Oh, and this button's a little bit of a different color. Maybe I should fix that. Oh, no, this button has a different border radius and roundness, and maybe this thing needs to be slid over. And eventually I just got obsessed with recreating the Twitter UI one-to-one. By the end of the weekend, I had spent 60 hours on this already. I had gotten so carried away that I basically just had a perfect clone of the Twitter front end. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should do something with this. Maybe I could make this public, get a couple friends in it, just have a little bit of fun. So I bought a domain, Crabber.net, of course, as you all know. So I guess I should tackle why was it called Crabber? Obviously, right, if you're making a Twitter clone, you choose a different animal other than a bird. Why crabs was sort of because I have this long-running inside joke with a friend where we kind of fight back and forth about what's better, a crab or a turtle. And it seems kind of nonsensical because it is, but I've always been on Team Crab, even though turtles are pretty cool anyway, but you know, I would never admit that. The name Twitter refers to like tweeting, right? Like the noise that birds make, but crabs don't really make noise. So I kind of just said crab-er, just added an to the end, and I thought it sounded kind of funny and stupid, which went along with the theme of the project at the time. So I was like, yeah, that works. So I did crabber.net, and the reason why it was .net instead of like .com was just because A, .com was taken, and B, .net made it sound even stupider, so stuck with that. I mean, the whole project was essentially just like a late April Fool's joke. It was never meant to be taken seriously at all. But once I put it online and had a couple people on it, I realized how much fun it was to use this little network. It had like this entirely different atmosphere to it, and I could add all of the features that I was always missing on Twitter, like being able to edit tweets, and I could polish that API, and I could do the bots. You could do all sorts of stuff, and I was really excited. So I ended up just getting addicted to adding features and polishing this little network. And I ended up doing that for about a year and a half before anybody really showed up. Like, I think we got up to 50 or so users in that time. But then obviously once October 2021 hit, it just exploded. You know, thousands and thousands of users just showed up out of nowhere. And I'll get to that in another video, but I just sort of wanted to make this quick thing that is an introduction to, I guess, what'll be a series of a couple of short videos to talk about the origin of Crabber, because a lot of people don't really know because everybody showed up so late into the game. Some people think Crabber was just made in that month where everybody showed up, but no, it existed for over a year and a half, and there were a lot of fun things that happened in that amount of time, which perhaps I could go into later as well. But yeah, that was sort of my reasoning for making Crabber. I hope this video wasn't too boring and I don't sound too annoying. I wanted to make this a little bit chill, so I'm not talking as loudly as I normally would. And also, I didn't script anything. This is just off the cuff, so we'll see how it goes. But, you know, thanks for listening. Thanks for being on Crabber if you were. And I hope you're looking forward to the rest of the videos in this series. If you are, you know, feel free to subscribe just so you see them when they come out. Otherwise, you know, they'll be here. You can search for them. Hope you're having a great week, and I'll see you later.